So today's video is going to be on Essential Parfums. I've bought a sample set and I thought it would be fun just to walk through each of these, tell you what I think, tell you which ones are my favourites, and let you tell me which ones you love too. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire. I talk all about fragrance on this channel. I do these fragrance reviews and I also talk about perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology. I love doing from perfume tags too. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing and please press the like button. So Essential Parfums was set up a few years ago to be an antidote to niche perfumery. They wanted to create a more affordable brand, they wanted to create a sustainable brand, and really they also wanted to showcase individual perfumers' talents. Each perfume in this range is formulated by a different perfumer and really aims to showcase just one or two ingredients. And these fragrances are also declared by the brand to be phthalate-free, which I know is important to a lot of my viewers because I get a lot of questions around phthalates. Also, these fragrances are incredibly affordable to sample. You can buy a sample set for as low as €26. And I think they currently have 11 fragrances on the market, including some versions of the original fragrances that are a higher concentration, a stronger version of those fragrances. So also the great thing about the sample sets is you are able to get the money you spend on the sample sets back if you buy a large bottle of perfume. So if you do find something you love, you can essentially do the sampling for free. So let's get on with this. What's the first fragrance? So number one is Nice Bergamote by Antoine Maisondieu. So this fragrance was not at all what I expected from the name. In fact, this fragrance actually could be called Nice Bergamote after the place in France. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce the first word, but we'll go with that, Nice Bergamote. So this fragrance is very happy and sunny and bright feeling in the opening. It's even a little bit oily. It makes me think of olive oil. It's very Mediterranean feeling. It's very clean in the opening, and actually as it dries down, the florals really begin to take over. It really stays very sunny feeling and happy feeling with those florals, and also a little bit yellow feeling. And the jasmine seems to make this even slightly soapy, but there's a lovely woodiness in the base. It dries down to me as an ylang-ylang and jasmine honeyed floral, but with a real kind of velvety texture to it. So given the opening of this and the name, I was really surprised by this. This one totally had me at hello. I thought the opening of this was very inventive and very different to other fragrances I've smelt. The dry down was less something that was distinctive, but I still really enjoyed it. I'd be totally happy, totally over the moon to have a little travel spray of this one. I really enjoyed this fragrance. That's Nice Bergamote. So the next fragrance is Rose Magnetic by Sophie Labbé. So this fragrance, I remember this was my first experience of Essential Parfums maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember the excitement over this one because it was being compared to Stella McCartney's Stella, which had been recently discontinued at the time. So personally, I can't say this one has ever made me think straight up of Stella, but I definitely do get a feeling of an idea of Stella in the opening. I do see where people are coming from, but I don't think this is a straight up dupe. So initially this is pink, pepper, sparkly, green stemmed roses. Garden roses that are dewy, pink, scented and fresh. It's not overly sweet to begin with. It really makes me think of rose petals or even a rose bath oil to begin with. Again though, much like the last fragrance, this really transforms into the dry down. It dries down much more powdery, less fresh, and almost like a Turkish delight kind of rose, covered with powdered sugar, and even like it's in a box alongside some lemon Turkish delight as well. It's even got a little bit of a liquid soap feel, and in the far dry down there's some incense that appears. Again, I thought this was a really well done fragrance. I really like the very clean feel of it, and I love the Turkish and the Bulgarian rose here. I think if you like those types of roses, then this one really might be something for you. So that's Rose Magnetic. So the next fragrance is Mon Vetiver by Bruno Jovanovic. So Vetiver is a bit of an enigma for me. Sometimes I really enjoy it and other times I just don't really get it in fragrances. It can be very hit and miss for me. So this fragrance is a dry, almost leathery feeling, woody vetiver. It's also a little bit warm and sunny feeling. It's fresh, but it's also a little bit fougere-like in that it's musky and even slightly soapy. This definitely isn't one of those kind of shaving soap kind of fragrances though, it's more earthy than that. As this dries down, I weirdly get more of the citrus rather than less of the citrus, and it becomes more leathery. So this fragrance made me think of hiking, perhaps somewhere like the Appalachian Mountains, somewhere quite fresh, but also quite woody. And I think the only thing that I found off-putting about it was that there was something slightly singed at points. It smelled almost a little bit rubbery at points as well. And I've got no clue what it is in this fragrance that's giving me those two kind of feelings. I don't think this one is necessarily a fragrance for me, but I don't think this is a bad fragrance at all. And I think if you love Vetiver, this is probably the one for you. So that's Mon Vetiver. So the next fragrance is Orange X Santal by Natalie Gracia-Cetto. So I would never have imagined this would be how Essential Parfums would combine the notes of orange and sandalwood. This is definitely not what I would have ever thought of. So this fragrance smells like orange peel in the opening, but it's greener and more bitter. And actually it also has a little bit of an aquatic or even oceanic feel to me as well. It actually makes me think of fir trees warmed by the sun, by some sand dunes, perhaps by a sea. The sandalwood here is not creamy, milky or figgy. This is definitely more of a drier, more powdery, more woody kind of sandalwood. The sandalwood is almost blonde feeling. It's got a lightness to it, and it's even slightly soapy, this fragrance. Perhaps actually soapier than all the other fragrances so far. It smells like an orange peel scented soap, but with a little bit of a green aquatic feel to it, and also a Tic Tac like sweetness, like the sugar coating on the outside of a Tic Tac. I'm not sure this one's for me. I think the soapiness here is really strange with the other notes in this fragrance. And I just don't feel like this one is my scent profile. But that's Orange X Santal. So the next fragrance is Divine Vanille by Olivier Pecheur. So this one was incredibly interesting. I was expecting a really easygoing vanilla fragrance, something quite basic. And of course it's Olivier, so we don't get that at all. What I got was a smoky, spiced, ambery vanilla. So this starts off really quite challenging. It's quite sharp to begin with. It makes me think of nail varnish remover in the opening. But within a few seconds, it transforms into a slightly smoky feeling incense fragrance with a sweet, warm, powdery vanilla tonka and even a slightly dark fruitiness to it. It's slightly plummy, and there's even some texture that makes me think of sort of more animalic notes. The dry down is quite dry and dusty, and the cinnamon really pops in the dry down, but it's still that really resinous vanilla tonka really overall. I think this one for me is something that I enjoyed, but I don't think is necessarily me. It's not something I'd want a bottle of, but I think it's inventive. And I do think I've smelt something in a similar vein before, so I think this one really gets widely compared to Parfums de Marly's Herod. And yes, there is a definite feeling of Herod here, but I would say this one is less aroma chemical heavy than Herod is. And I think really if you want something similar but at a lighter price point, then this might be a fragrance to check out. I did think this one lasted quite a long time on me. And yeah, really overall this is a resinous, smoky, vanilla tonka fragrance. Very likeable I think to most people. So that's Divine Vanille. Next up is The Musc by Khalees Becker. So this one, I didn't really register at all that it would smell like this. I was really shocked when I first smelt this. So this opens much like a less fruity, less aquatic version of something like Dior's J'adore. I was struck by just how similar that fragrance is in the opening to this one, despite having very different notes. It smells golden, it smells dense, sweet and floral. And this also does smell slightly aquatic to me, much like J'adore, but definitely less aquatic feeling than J'adore does. As this dries down though, it's less and less like J'adore. The lavender smells gentle and powdery, but the beeswax gives this a very subtle sweetness. The musk here is very nice, it's smooth and it's white. It gets more powdery into the final dry down, but it's really the beeswax that pops more as it dries down. That's really the star, the beeswax. That's what makes it distinctive and different. So yeah, with this one, I was expecting something called The Musc to smell quite different to how this opened. I wasn't expecting something to smell along the lines of J'adore. But actually, I'd say even if you don't like J'adore, give this one a chance. It dries down, it transforms into something that's a very different fragrance. And actually, I think this one is very clean feeling, it's very bright feeling, it's got a lovely kind of sweetness to it with that beeswax, so distinctive. And I also think this one is incredibly strong. I got compliments on this one from 5 meters away after I'd had this on my skin a couple of hours. So I definitely think this one is one that projects and that people can smell. So that's the Musc. So next is Bois Imperial by Quentin Bisch. I think this is the fragrance in the set that gets all the love, isn't it? This is the really famous one that's done the best, I think, out of the whole set. So this opens warm, earthy, peppery and a little herbal. The basil is quite prominent. The opening really makes me think of Italian food and making a tomato sauce. You know, the bit at the end when you're adding the basil and finally the pepper. I find the opening to be lovely. The warmth is really inviting and it smells almost like a polished mahogany. It's not too dark, not too woody, and it's got a real airiness and a lightness to it. The basil and the pepper really carry this fragrance initially, but as it begins to dry down, to me it begins to smell a little bit like furniture polish, and I like it a little bit less. I think there's perhaps some ambroxan here and perhaps a few other aroma chemicals that I can't name, but there's definitely some woody aroma chemicals here that I find relatively off-putting, but I know that so many other people aren't bothered by these things. But to me it smells a little bit polish-like or even slightly metallic. It's really quite peppery in the dry down, and I think this is a fragrance that perhaps smells better in the air from a distance. You know, when I'm smelling fragrances, I'm smelling them quite close up. So I think maybe this is something that does have quite a lot of power to it and people will smell around you. And I think it's probably meant to be smelled like that rather than something close up. I found this one to be pretty infinite on me, longevity-wise, and also pretty strong. I think this is a type of fragrance that I struggle with because Quentin Bisch is someone who does tend to use particular aroma chemicals that I struggle with. But I think, you know, for other people, this is something that is probably going to be very popular. So that's Bois Imperial. So the final fragrance is Fig Infusion by Natalie Lawson. So this opens as a very noticeable tea and fig fragrance with a subtle bitter orange citrus peel feel to it. The fig is green and fresh and there's a very noticeable powdery feel to this too. It actually isn't the same, but it does make me think of fragrances like Le Papier by Diptyque and also Unspoken Gesture by Joram Studio, which I imagine might be some mimosa in this fragrance perhaps, or something slightly nutty feeling. There's definitely a sweet, powdery aspect to Fig Infusion. As it dries down, it's more woody, and the tea turns into something that smells a little bit like green matcha. This is definitely a greener interpretation of fig, and the woody powderiness actually makes me think of unsmoked cigarettes at points, but it sweetens up with a citrus into the dry down. I mean, I describe it as unsmoked cigarettes, but it's not unpleasant at all. It's just that kind of dry feeling that I'm trying to describe. I think the major problem with Fig Infusion for me was that it seemed to fade from my skin very quickly, so maybe there's a second stage to this fragrance that I've missed out on, but really it ended there for me because I didn't really smell it beyond maybe an hour or so. But I think with Fig Infusion, there's a stronger version on the market now at a higher concentration. So if you are interested in Fig Infusion and you find it doesn't last for you, you might be better off checking out the stronger version. So yeah, that's Fig Infusion. So in summary, I think these fragrances represent interesting twists on familiar scent profiles, and I think they really do showcase the individual styles of the perfumers involved. I think you could be possibly being able to find a bargain within this range because there are fragrances that these fragrances are compared to a lot of the time. So for example, Ganymede with Bois Imperial and Herod with Divine Vanille. So I think, you know, if you are looking for a particular dupe and you know that same perfumer is making one of these, it might be worth trying this range. For me, the standout here was Nice Bergamote, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but yeah, I really liked that one. I thought that was a really interesting twist. I also really liked the Musc. I thought that was also something that was very unexpected with the beeswax. And I can totally see people loving fragrances like Rose Magnetic and even Divine Vanille and even Bois Imperial, even though those particular ones are perhaps not as much my style. I think for me, these fragrances range massively in lasting power, but most of them do last really well. And some of them are very strong and very powerful, but I'd be interested to compare them to the extrait versions. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, then please do press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, have you tried any of these fragrances? Which one is your favourite? Have you tried the extrays? How do they compare to the other fragrances in this range? And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.